Hi friends and welcome back to another video. Today it is day 80 on hashtag ASR 1990 Data Science Challenge, and today in this video we are going to look at how train test split works. Train test split is a technique that is used in regression and classification machine learning algorithms. It works in such a way that, so now let's say I have 100 rows of data, so in which we will pass or we will train only a specific amount of data, and we will test the remaining part of data. That is, now let's say I want to train 80% of my data, and I want to check how it works with this remaining 20% amount of data. So now let's perform a linear regression model using this technique, train test split. So now let's move on to our Jupyter notebook. So now let's import our necessary packages and let's look at our data. This is a little more bigger data than the previous ones. So now let's look at the shape of the data. So df.shape, and it contains 40 rows and 2 columns, that is the hours and marks, where my hours is the independent variable and marks is the dependent variable. So now let's see whether this is a regression type of data or not. So in order to check for that, let's plot a scatter plot. So plt dot scatter, and in which I will pass df dot hours for my axis x and df dot marks for my axis y, and I will give them the labels. So plt dot x label, and I want it to be my horse, and plt dot y label, where I want it to be my marks, and finally my title, where I want it to be horse versus marks. Let's run this out, and here is our particular plot, and it is clear that it is a regression plot. And now we can perform our linear regression algorithm. So as here we are going to use our train test split technique, we are going to split our data. So in order to perform that, we need to use the other module from our sklearn, that is the model selection. So from sklearn dot model selection, and in which I want to import train test split sklearn. So when we perform our train test split technique, we will end up with 4 new variables, that is the x train, the x test, and the y train, and the y test. So suppose let's say I have 100 rows in which my independent variable x, that is in this case our horse column, so 80 rows of our horse column will be stored in my variable x train, and the remaining 20 rows of my horse column will be stored in my x test. Those 80 rows in my horse column, their equivalent 80 rows of the column marks would be stored in my y train, and the remaining 20 rows would be stored in my y test. So let's perform this. So x train comma x test and y train and y test, where, and they would be my desired outcome, where I will perform the function train test split, and in which I will pass the variables x and y. So we haven't created those variables yet, so now let's do it. So x is equals my column hours and y equals my column marks. And in our function train test split, we must pass in the third parameter, that is the test size. So test size. So most popularly everyone would prefer to take the test size should be 20% or 33% or either 50%. So in this case I am going to try all these three. So firstly let's put on the value 0.2, that is 20% of it, and now let's run this out. And now let's look at the total rows we have in our X train, that is length of my training dataset, that is 32, which is 80% of the 40 rows we have. And let's look at those data. So X train, and here they are. So when you run this particular cell again and again, you will get different data, and they are not in the same order, they are randomly selected. And now let's perform our linear regression. So now let's create an object for our linear regression algorithm. So R equals linear model dot linear regression. Oops, we haven't imported it yet. So from sklearn import linear model, and yeah, now we are good to go. And here we have to fit in our training dataset, that is r.fit, where I will fit my X train and my Y, and yeah, we are good to go now. And let's predict. So r.predict, in which I will pass in my X test, and here are those values. And now let's see how well our model worked. So in order to do that, let's see r.score, and we will pass our two variables X test and Y test. Let's run this out, and it comes out to be 0.969, which is, our model is 96.9% accurate. And now let's change the testing size. So we had 96.9% accurate for our 0.2 test size, and now let's change it to 0.33, and let's run them out, and it comes out to be 0.985, that is 98.5%. So 98.5% for the test size of 0.33. and now let's look at how it performs for 0.5. so let's run them out, and it turns out to be 0.98, that is just 98%. So overall I think 0.33, that is the test size of 0.33, works better than the others in this case. And yeah, that's all for today in this video. And in this video we looked at how the technique train test split works. Thanks for watching. Like the video, leave a comment down below, and let's meet on day 81.